משיח בן דוד, במהרה יבוא אלינו עם משיח, משיח בן דוד. אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו הגלעדי, אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו הגלעדי, במהרה יבוא אלינו עם משיח, משיח בן דוד, במהרה יבוא אלינו עם משיח, משיח בן דוד. אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו הגלעדי, אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו הגלעדי, במהרה יבוא אלינו עם משיח, משיח בן דוד, במהרה יבוא אלינו עם משיח, משיח בן דוד, במהרה יבוא אלינו עם משיח, משיח בן דוד, במהרה יבוא אלינו עם משיח, משיח בן דוד. לה 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 לה
Welcome everybody to this beautiful occasion. Today we are continuing our articulation series in which art informs Torah and Torah informs art in an amalgamation and in a continual conversation that has continued through millennia. But today is a very special articulation. We have for our artist Judith Joseph, who lives in Chicago, focuses on wood blocks and paintings, has been exhibited internationally, and explores memory, Jewish experience, and so much through our art. And we're going to be very fortunate to enter that, to engage with her art today. As well, we have Rabbi Baruch Thaler, the founder of the Nitzitzot community. Rabbi Baruch Thaler engages in both the beauty of the mystic realm and also very rooted in the human experience. This week's Parsha, we're reading Parshat Metzora, and without further ado, Rabbi, would you please frame the parsha for us?
I had to get out of isolation, like the Metzora, to begin here, out of mute. So welcome, everyone. Thank you, Thaler, and my deepest sympathies to Judith, who just lost her mother last few weeks. And, they say, they call Torah the greatest panacea, the greatest medicine. And when Judith and we were going over the Parsha and her art last week, it just so organically became a healing discussion, and how we can use Torah, and even the specific Torah related to that time of our whatever experience we're going through, to learn from it in our personal lives. So as we'll see, that is something that we went through, and I'll share it from the Torah text side, and Judith will soon share it from her visual. And so, as Thaler mentioned, this week's parsha is Metzora, which loosely translates as leper, though it's, as Rabbi Jason Herman mentioned last week, that's not the most accurate translation. Something closer to psoriasis would fit the description best. So the question immediately arises is, most years we read both last week's Torah portion and this week's portion together, because last week describes the various skin and other ailments, and this week's Torah portion is step 2. How do we purify how does the leper purify himself from this malady? Yet this year is one of those rare years where it's split, and we just focus this week on the purification process. So it's all about leaving leprosy. Yet the name of the Torah portion this week is precisely leper, Metzora. So how does this cohere? Haven't we left the impurities of Tzarat? Haven't we left it in last week's parsha? Why are we still schlepping it into our parsha this week if we're already on to the next stage? So a possible insight in this has both to do with the name of the parsha and what the inner meaning of Metzora means, and also with what is used for the purification process itself. So Metzora, we know the Talmud says, is actually a conflation for the phrase Motzi Shemra, for one who lets out, speaks in a disrespectful way, and in a slanderous way about someone else. So, what we know as Lashon Hara. So as the affliction of Metzora is in fact God's signal to the individual that they messed up in this area of that they spoke slander or hurt others, and therefore this is a sign from above, as Maimonides says, that Metzora is not merely a medical condition, but it's moreover an actual message from above to fix ourselves, to fix that in this specific area of how we communicate, how we express ourselves about others, being careful of focusing on positive, and not to let our words get ahead of ourselves. So that is all fine and dandy. So that's a beautiful teaching. But as we'll see, there's an even deeper way we could read into the name of the parsha, Metzora, which will illuminate it even more. And that is with understanding too what we use for the ritualization cleansing process. So it says that the Kohen takes, it's an opening of the parsha, takes the following items: a piece of cedar, some clumps of strands of hyssop grass. Then he takes two living birds. Then takes a clay vessel with well water, known as living water, in it. Then he binds the flora, the very, and one more thing is a patch of red dyed wool made from a dye of a certain worm extraction. So take all these together. One thing is the Kohen slaughters the living bird. The blood goes into the vessel. They bury the bird. Then he takes all the above mentioned items with the living bird, dips it into this admixture of water and blood, then uses that to sprinkle on the person who had on the leper. And once that is done, then the person is ready to reintegrate into society, to go back into the camp. And even then, he doesn't go directly indoors. He still stays outdoors at his front for a while. Getting back into society first, and then goes back into his private residence. So this is the bridging of transforming from the worst of impurity, of tumah, which is expressed through tzara'at, to the state of renewal to the highest order, and this is expressed by these very items used for the purification. They all symbolize contrasts. The cedar is the tallest of trees that we in the Bible is mentioned as such many times. The hyssop is called azov, which is generically used for grass. It's the lowest of vegetation. We bring them together. So too we take the redness of blood and the transparency of the water. The leper too, the infliction expresses itself in white, the skin going white. So we recombine again the loss of blood flow in the person with blood now. We also take the two birds. The one represents, it's almost like Yom Kippur with the two sa'irim, the two bulls, one for life, one is mishtaleach, sent off, cast away. And the living bird is let free, loose, to fly off into the sky. So this is what the purification process represents, that even something that appears to be so defiling, like tumah, like this pollution that has stuck to the leper. Yet at the same time, within it contains the possibility for transformation, to bring the healing from it, through it. In fact, according to Kabbalah, everything, even the lowest realms of tumah, come from the highest divine sources. It's just ironically has been it's too holy. It's in the state of chaos, of tohu, and in a way that it has not been concentrated enough to flow in a focused, healthy way. So that is the purification process of dealing with these last remnants of that holiness that cannot permeate in us, it just sticks to our outside, and to reveal that even something like illness contains the healing, the powers of healing within it. and in fact that they're two sides of the same concept. That
Yeah.
is why too, according to yeah.
So I want to also move to the second part, and then we'll come back to kind of react and think about the ideas. But I think this presents such a beautiful framing for the parsha of that even in things that seem challenging to look at, there are ways of seeing both sides of a contrasted coin. And so in kind of going through this process, I call on Judith to kind of share with us her art and interpretation of this parsha.
Okay, are you ready for me then? All right. First of all, I just want to say that I'm so happy to see all of you here. I see a lot of people from my synagogue, Hakafa, and I thank you for coming. I have family here, and I especially want to welcome my father, Harry Kanan, and my brother, David Kanan. And I think my sister might be here somewhere. She was going to be, but she might drop in a little later. We're still in, her name is Sandy Basker, and we're still in the period of Shloshim for my mother, who passed away March 19th. I also see my cousin Ruth Ann, and I'm so happy to see you here. And my friends, of course. When I approached this parsha with Rabbi Thaler, I'm not a scholar. And, you know, my feeling about Torah is kind of selective. There are parts of it that really resonate with me, and other parts, like a lot of Leviticus, which I have a harder time with. And in fact, I have 3 sons, and I remember thinking when they were coming up on their bar mitzvah year, oh, let them not get leprosy, you know, for their parsha. So I got leprosy, go figure. And as is always the fact with Torah, once you get into it, you realize it's so rich and there's so much that you can relate to. When we sat down to study, I couldn't wait to have Rabbi Thaler elucidate this parsha for me, because it was not something I could warm up to myself. And as we studied together and he talked about it, what really struck me was that when we are ill, it sort of erases our individuality. We're all reduced to sort of this very mortal, physical common denominator. And that's especially true with skin diseases, because they literally efface your face. I mean, in the Bible, it's described that the leprosy fell on people like snow. So you picture this sort of coating of white. And indeed, leprosy does, it eats away at features, so people become unrecognizable. And of course, it may be that it's not about leprosy, but that did enter my mind. So psoriasis actually does resonate with me too, because my mother, who I'm going to talk about in a moment, she had an older brother named Zach, who was a very, very handsome and intelligent and talented man. He was a physician, but he unfortunately had psoriasis. So I grew up looking at psoriasis, and I was so used to it on him that I could always see the handsome, vital man that my uncle was, despite that, but people were certainly put off by it. So I felt like I had some sensitivity for that. So as I listened to Rabbi Thaler talk about this parsha, what I thought about was, I pictured a person just sort of getting coated with white paint, and that's sort of erasing their individuality. And I also thought about, because I'm a Hebrew calligrapher and I always think about the letters and the page, I thought about the white piece of paper or cloth, which is the skin that the Torah is written on, and the black letters upon it, and how the whiteness of a skin disease, it wipes away the letters, you know, that are in all of us in a sense. So that was the imagery that I was sort of working with when we first met back in February. And I was running this through my head. And as this residency and as time progressed, my mother was getting more and more ill. She was 94 years old. And I I had our second meeting was scheduled, and I had to call it off, and actually she passed away the next day. And we had postponed it for the following week, which was outside the period of Shiva, but still, of course, within the period of Shloshim that we're still within. And I thought about just not dealing with it. And then I made a choice, which for me was a very profound choice, which was I decided to make a piece of art about Metzora, about this Torah portion, and simultaneously about my mother, processing her passing. And it was quite an interesting process, and I'm going to share it with you. So I'll share my screen now and show you. Wait 1 second. Okay. Okay, so I'm hoping that you're seeing the first slide, which just says Amen Institute, right? Can somebody say yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so when I thought about doing this work, as I said, I decided I was going to put my mother into it, actually draw her, kind of, and involve the white color coming down upon her. And I really felt, before I talked to Rabbi Thaler the second time, I had this feeling about a very grim work of art. But in the course of our Chavruta, our conversation, it was so wonderful because I started to speak about my mother's life and what a rich tapestry it was. And I don't use the word tapestry casually because my mother was a fiber artist. She embroidered, or she did needlepoint tapestries, and she did a lot of knitting and crocheting and made spectacular quilts. So she was incredibly prolific. She had a beautiful sense of design and color. And so when I thought about her, I didn't want to just do something grim. I really wanted to do something colorful. So this was the first, okay, let me go to the first slide. So this was the beginning of the canvas, and it's a 30 by 40 inch canvas. And I started just laying down colors that were typical in her work. And she loved really bright colors and natural colors, really, the colors of greenery and sky and flowers and things like that. And then I really can't think about my mother these days without thinking about a text from Proverbs, which is not part of our Torah portion, but it just was so relevant to me that I decided to include it in the piece. And it's the last chapter of Proverbs, verses 10 through 31, and it's very famous. You've all heard it. Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor who can find, for her prices far above rubies. I'm going to read a little of this because it perfectly describes my mother. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, and he hath no lack of gain. She doeth him good and not evil all the days of her life. Now here's the part that really speaks to my mother. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant ship. She brings her food from afar. And then it goes on later with, she layeth her hands to the distaff and her hands hold the spindle. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor. She reacheth forth her hands to the needy. She maketh her for herself coverlets, which she literally did. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. She maketh linen garments and selleth them. So a lot of Eshet Chayil, a lot of women of valor in Proverbs, she's described as a fiber artist. She's described as a woman who takes linen and wool and dyes it and makes beautiful things. And I think that's really notable. And of course, that really spoke to me. So this is where the painting began, with this colorful background and then the Hebrew calligraphy, which I did with a brush. And then this was the second iteration, the second layer. And my mother's favorite color was blue. And so our home had a lot of blue in it. So I laid down the kind of the warmer colors underneath and then on top the blue. And I let the paint just drip. And I think part of that was it looks like threads, but it also is weeping. This was a very emotional experience for me, as I'm sure you can imagine. So this is a little shocking. This is actually partly a sketch. So when it came time to draw my mother, I decided to draw her as she looked at the very end, right before she passed away. I was with her. Our whole family was around her. It was really a beautiful, remarkable thing. My father, my siblings, and all of our spouses. And we were all in one room with her. And as the day wore on, most of us left for a while. And that was when she passed away. But my sister and my father were still with her. And I stood in front of this canvas thinking about how I was going to draw my mother. And I really didn't want to sugarcoat death. I wanted to portray the terror of it, the fear of it, what it does to a body. And my mother was a person who didn't sugarcoat things. She was very pragmatic, very down to earth. She told you exactly what she thought. You could read it on her face. She was completely transparent and honest. And I thought, I stood in my studio and I felt like I should call somebody for permission. I thought about calling my dad or my sister or my brother. And then I thought, art has to be true. It has to be honest, or there's no point in doing it. So the sketch of my mother that you see is actually painted on the canvas, and the white shapes above, actually, I took a picture of the canvas at that stage, and then I drew those in digitally as a sketch. And what that represents is the hyssop, and hyssop actually is it's lavender. It's a form, it's in the mint family, and it's very close to lavender. And when I found that out, I couldn't believe it, because my mother actually loved lavender, and so do I. I have a dispersal thing with, the oils. I have it in my studio, and I find lavender to be very soothing. So this was right up my alley and right up her alley. So this is another sketch. I started just kind of playing around with different possibilities with the white. The white is digitally done, but the black drawing of my mother was already on the canvas. So this is how the painting actually emerged. Oh no, this isn't the final one. Hang on. Let me make sure. I took so many pictures of this. Yeah, this was a stage. And what happened here was I had these horizontal kind of bands across the top. And I later decided, with the help of my friend Ruti Modlin, she said, "You're going to hate me for saying this." And I said, "What? Tell me." And she said, that white at the top, it sort of puts a lid on the painting. And I totally agreed with that. And I'd sort of been thinking that myself. So I later changed that. So I'm sharing this with you so that you see the process that a painting goes through in the mind of the artist, and how things come about. Because, I'm always interested to hear that. So I hope you're interested too. So this is the painting after I removed the white at the top, and I really like it because I feel that it allows things to float up. And I want to talk a little about this imagery. When I was with my mother towards the end, she was in a lot of discomfort, not pain, but she was struggling. But she knew that we were around her. And when I greeted her, I hugged her and I kissed her, and I gave her my cheek, and she actually kissed me back. So she knew that she was surrounded by the people who loved her. And I just hugged her, and I thought, in my mind, I pictured, there's that phrase, I think it's an El Malay Rachamim, which is read at the funeral, carry us away on the wings of Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is the feminine part of God. And I just visualized these wings coming down and carrying my mother away. And I just said to her, let them carry you away. And I pictured these beautiful white, like angel wings, but Shekhinah wings. And so I put that in the painting, because we don't know when a person is at the end, what they're seeing, what they're hearing. And I was hoping that she was seeing something beautiful. So you can see here, the drawing of my mother, the feathers, there's some red, which I just flung at the canvas, and that sort of represents the blood of the bird in the parsha. And then the plants, of course, are the hyssop. So
Do you think you could start the presentation? Because we're seeing your whole PowerPoint setup, and
Oh, no,
I love these images, but
no.
I'm not seeing them as big as I want to.
I wish you'd said that earlier. It's hard to tell because I have two screens, what you're seeing. Okay.
That's okay. Maybe click on the from current slide, double click, see if that brings it.
Did that bring it?
No, did you?
No, you know what? I know what I need to do. I need to go out and get back in. I'm so sorry about that. That's so frustrating. Okay, so
Don't worry. Don't
how
worry.
about now?
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
I apologize. I'm going to go back through a few of these. Do we have time for that, Tira? Is that okay?
Sure, yes.
Okay, I'll do the last few. Okay, so what I really want to, let's see here. Okay, so I want to talk about this depiction of my mother because it's really intense. I realize that. And before I showed it to you, I actually went over and saw my dad, and I showed it to him, and I sent the photo to my siblings because I didn't want to share this publicly until they were, okay with it. And my father just, I think you were a little shocked at first, but my father just said, this is true. This is exactly how it was. And so I also want you to see what my mother looked like before she became elderly and old. This is one of my favorite photos of her. This was when she was, I think, around 50. I was probably around 20 or 22, which would have made her 52. And she just was full of life and very enthusiastic about beauty. And she always commented if there was a beautiful sunset. And just a very warm and incredibly loving person, a wonderful mother. She just absolutely put her family first. So I needed you to see that. And then as far as this face, someone I showed this painting to commented on the green because they found it disturbing. And I want to show you kind of, I think, where this came from. I'm not capable of talking about my work without showing art historical sources. And, this is Marc Chagall, I in the Village, or I in My Village. This is in the Art Institute of Chicago. I've seen it many times. And he's got the peasant with the green face, which I think kind of connects him to nature, which is how I felt about my mom, this green of life. So another few images I want to share with you. This is a horrible image. But it's part of my history with my mom. My mom studied art history. She went back to college as an adult, and she would come home and give me the entire lecture that she got. And this was in her textbook, the Jansen textbook. And it was the most horrible, scary painting I've ever seen, much scarier than horror movies. And this is the Isenheim altarpiece by Matthias Grunewald. And the interesting thing is this disgusting, really terrifying crucifixion was made for a hospital, the chapel of a hospital that treated patients with skin diseases. So I think it was a way to show the suffering of the Christian God in a way that people really could relate to and feel comforted by. But as a kid, these green lips, I mean, it was really just something I would deliberately look at just to scare myself, which kind of, I don't know what that says about me. Another thing that came to my mind, and these things came to my mind after the painting was done, I just want you to know. This is a sculpture by Bernini. It's the Ecstasy of Santa Teresa. It's in the Church of Maria della Vittoria in Rome. And I know it's weird that I'm showing all this Christian art, but this is the art that I grew up looking at, because when you study art history, this is what they show you. So the thing that struck me about this was that her face she's swooning in ecstasy. She's having an ecstatic vision of God. This angel has struck her with this arrow, but it could also be, that she's passing away. So I just was struck by that similarity.
What was your mother's name?
Oh, I'm sorry, I never told you her name. Her name was Elsie Canaan. And I just, as she aged, very sadly, my mother had dementia. And it was a terrible thing for our family to watch. And of course, it was terrible for her because she had the kind of dementia where she knew that she could not remember her life and that she should remember it. So she had a lot of anguish with that. But she always still would come alive when I would share art with her. And this is a photo from an art exhibit that I had about, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. And my parents came to the opening. And, I took this photo of them in front of a couple of my woodcuts. And you can just see the expression on her face. It's so loving. And she's so happy to be there. And she went around with me and she had such insightful comments to say about all of my work. And every time I took her to an art exhibit of other people's work too, even if she couldn't remember her family, she couldn't, her siblings or a lot of things she should have been able to remember. The fact that she was a nurse, the fact that she was a docent for 40 years at the art center. She couldn't remember any of that, but she would stand in front of art and totally get it. She would have these incredibly insightful comments. So this is a very scary thing for me to share with you. I just want to say that. And I hope that you take it in the way that it's intended. I know that if I thought about what my mother would say if she saw this, and the first thing she'd say was, "Why'd you have to make me look so bad?" And the second thing I know she would say would be, she would start to talk about the piece and she would totally understand it and appreciate it. So that I hope that you appreciate it in the same way that it was intended. So I'm sorry I had the slides on small, but I hope that you got the idea. So Tavir, I don't know if you want to moderate questions, or I don't know if we're out of time or.
No, first I'd like to bring Rabbi Baruch back. Thank you so much for just sharing something so sensitive, and it's really it takes a lot of courage to transform all that you've experienced emotionally in the last several weeks and to create art from it. So I definitely want to hold that, and thank you for also just creating such a beautiful piece.
Yes, it was like really moving and mesmerizing, and I was you only revealed details until this point. To see it all as one, and also showing your process, and it was like we had the opportunity to see 5 pieces of art in one, layered upon each other. And that's a great lesson related to the Parsha too, that evolving, healing ourselves from painful experiences, like healing a wound of the skin. It needs to scab, it needs to layer, it's not just to force the medicine, but rather to integrate ourselves in that. It becomes part of our natural well-being. So thank you very much, and Mike, and thanks for bringing the mishpacha, your father, here. It's very special.
Yeah, very special.
Yes, and I loved too that you integrated text words into the piece, which that's the real union of the world of Torah, world of visualization, and in fact a lot of the healing is similar in both text and art have similar components, which is we take raw materials, whether they are letters out of the alphabet bowl or the easel and all the tactile materials used for art, and then we formulate it, we form it, we make symmetry or patterns or sequences out of it to give it meaning, language, a whole new form of expression. And at times it's not even for the healing, it's not even about adding more to it, but it's rather mainly about just realigning what we have already to take the materials of our existence, of our lives, what we've acquired, and just work with that to open up and reconnect loose pipes and or things that are not in its healthy flow. And so that too is, in fact, what using letters is the word for. Maybe I'll share here too. Let me see, where do I have it? Oops, yeah. I just had it open. That the word for the blemish is called nega. Oh, here it is. I have it. No, where is it? It's called Nun Gimel Ayin. Where do I have it? 1 second. Just I have too many windows open. Here we are. Is there a way I could share on my end?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Wait, are you sure?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. On the bottom here, yes. Share screen. Okay. So here let me just close this here. Okay. So the word for nega, which means blemish, is nun gimel ayin. It's the same Hebrew letters as oneg, delight, which is the highest blissful state. In fact, in the most ancient of Kabbalistic texts, the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, it uses these letters to show the polar extremes that all of existence can process. We could go from the lowest realm of blemish, nun gimel ayin, yet not even adding to it, but just readjusting the letters, we reach the most sublime state of oneg. This realignment of taking what we have already and just to bring out its potential in connecting all the dots together is also in the word here. The Kabbalists say that oneg stands for Eden, Nahar, which is the river that comes out of Eden, to quench in the garden, to water the garden, Gan. That is oneg. So this is the healthy flow. From Eden, the river flows into the garden. That is the oneg, the delight. When it's misaligned, when the river is separate from connecting the garden to Eden, that's where we get the blemish. That's where we get the unhealthy state. So it's like the artist, we in our lives too, is to take the materials that we have already and just find the aesthetic, therapeutic, and redemptive ways to just bring all of our parts, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. And also going through the bereavement process is a lot of that, taking the memories of our beloveds, reaffirming down here, while the spirit is finding its return, her return on high to the source of where the blemish and bliss, delight are one.
Can I jump in on that too? Because
Yes.
we have an artist present here tonight, Ellen Holtzblatt, who is one of the Men Institute Fellows this year too. And she did her presentation earlier, and she does paintings of her mother at this stage. I mean, all of her paintings, I think, include her mother, her elderly mother. And her mother is her muse. And the paintings are just magnificent oil paintings. And it's been really interesting for me because it never dawned on me, or I'm not a portrait artist. I'm really not a figurative artist. So I never thought about painting my mother before. But as I was painting my mother this time, I thought a lot about Ellen's paintings and how profound it is to paint your mother. I mean, because that's where you come from. And that is the beginning of your life. And it's a tribute, but it becomes like a self-portrait in a way, because you're mirroring back to yourself how you feel about your mother, and just a lot of story that goes into it, your whole history of your life. So I wanted to give Ellen a shout out, because her work, I think, informed my work in a certain way, even though it's completely different, really completely different, as she would tell you too. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. It's the collaboration, the sharing, like Shiva, where we don't, it's not by the solace is not in mere isolation. It's by expressing what we have, connecting with others and receiving from others. And in fact, your first piece of art since your mother passed on has come through this collective effort. So
Absolutely.
So it shows that amazing healing power that we.
And if you work like me, you work alone. I don't really usually collaborate, and really, the whole Jewish life is so communal and collaborative. And of course, the death process pulls in the community and the support of the community, which is an incredibly beautiful thing. That thank God I got to this stage in my life and really had never experienced. Very, very grateful for that. And just the experience of the Chavruta, as I said, sitting down with you, Rabbi Thaler, it really, I feel like it was so comforting, and it brought me further on my journey with this grief process. It's hard to talk about without sounding trite, but you want to look at it's so important. It's such an important moment of life. You really want to be in it. You don't want to just bury it. And so this helped me to really look at a lot of different parts of it and experience it in a way that was just amazing and unexpected.
Yes, alchemizing that grief into golden radiance here, to something that becomes like just seeing the canvas with the drip evokes already that sense of catharsis, of being in the moment, of expressing the fullest that we need to for now.
Yeah.
In order to move to go forward and alchemize these experiences into something that elevates ourselves and our beloved.
It is really true that studying Torah is the right thing to do when you're mourning.
Yeah, in fact, it says in the Parsha, this is the Torah of Metzora. It doesn't say this is the laws or purification process. It calls it Torah. And our rabbis say it's because the Lashon Hara, the slander, came through the misuse of words. So we repair that by using words, the same alphabet, but now channeling just sacredness and embodying it through us, So maybe we can do that too. There's a custom to learn in the memory of the departed, learn some Mishnayot and such. So if you want, after the program, we could do something we could get some people onto it to do some learning.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Something that was very beautiful to witness through your studies was how you transformed each of the symbols that are described in the Parsha as different elements that represented your mother. And I was curious if you would like to walk us through some of the elements that represent aspects of your mother's life.
Absolutely. I would love to. Okay, so let me see about, I'm going to try and do it right this time. Let's see here. Okay, so, whoops. Oh, this is going to be a little tricky, but I'll try. I think you're seeing all of them, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's still in the, in the.
Okay, so try it again.
Do you mind going through them again?
Sure. Let me yeah. So let's talk about what Dvir just brought up. So now you can see at full screen, right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So so the birds in the Parsha are represented with the feathers, which you can see the big feather hovering right over my mother. And there are drips of red paint on that, which represents the blood of the bird. And I just flung that, and that's fun to do, just it's cathartic to paint that way too, and to just throw paint at the canvas. And then I already described the hyssop, which is actually lavender, similar to lavender, not exactly the same as lavender. So those are the vertical plants that you see, sort of, and they're like, I like to have imagery that can be read different ways. So the drips, the hyssop, the feathers, they all sort of flow together. They're not that distinct from each other. And then on my mother, her right hand here, I ended up putting these sort of radiant lines, just as if she's already sort of turning into something that's going to fly. Her hand is sort of becoming a feather. It's transforming a little bit. And let's see what else was in the Parsha that I'm thinking about. I guess the color, I already discussed that, how that represents just the intensity and the joy in her personality and the joy that she took in life, and her artwork that she made, represents the colors that she loved to use. My mother was also a musician. She played the piano, and when she was young, she played viola. And her hand was like this at the end. It was like she was struggling, she was reaching, but it almost looks like she's pressing on some piano keys. I mean, that struck me later. She had some, really long, beautiful fingers. And her fingers are over the letters that are behind her. And one thing I want to tell you about that wasn't in the Parsha, but it's pretty significant. My mother had an Orthodox Jewish funeral at graveside, and the rabbi told us, and he had not discussed this with my dad beforehand or anything, so we were all very surprised. There's a tradition in Judaism that when you have Hebrew text that has the name of God, you don't destroy it, you bury it, like you bury a body. So they had brought along a whole lot of books and pieces of paper with Hebrew lettering and the name of God. And they're called shemos or shemot, because shem is the word for name in Hebrew. So it's the name of God. And all of this Hebrew text was just laid down on the top of my mother's coffin. And I felt it was such a sacred thing and really an honor. And she also, she taught people how to read Hebrew, adult friends who never learned. She, in her own time, just sat with them and tutored them until they learned to read Hebrew. And she taught quite a few people that way. So it seemed very appropriate. And she's resting in my painting. She's resting on the Hebrew letters. So that sort of is a mirror of what happened, with the Shemot. Devere, does that cover all your the questions? Did I skip anything?
No, yes.
Okay.
It also gave us another opportunity to look at the beautiful image. Richard has a question.
Judith, wow, you have great courage, and may you be comforted among all mourners in Zion and Yerushalayim.
Thank you.
I was moved by two things. One, your use of the Bernini, a favorite piece of mine, and to take it and to really kind of run with it in different ways, and indeed even see it reflecting in this painting. The second thing, I can't resist. You mentioned about the Seamus. Now, this reminds me when I guess it was 2006 when we buried my mother. There was a rabbi who was a friend from the synagogue, not the main rabbi, but who officiated. And so she had been in the coffin, lowered into the grave. And we're starting to shovel in the dirt. And then suddenly, at the other end of the grave, my rabbi, a friend really, suddenly takes out a bag, a Dunkin' Donuts bag, and throws it down into the grave. Now, at first I was shocked. I mean, I know the tradition about burying Seamus, but I did not expect it at that moment. And naturally, you just kind of can't believe it. And I kind of, I realized, that's what he's doing. And my wife turned to me and she said, your mother always liked sweets. It was just
Wow.
one of those moments I had to share, because the Seamus, again, it's like, it's the time to do it, but you don't necessarily expect it. And
Whoa, yeah. They just never tell us, they just do it.
Right.
Wow, that is quite a story, Richard. Thank you.
Anyway, thank you, Judith, so much for sharing this and going through this process. When you some of the things you said, I started to think that in a way, perhaps, is art making frequently a healing? And is it a healing that, I don't mean to be expansive and poetic about it, maybe it's a healing we don't even know. We don't know what we're healing. But when we put things together and making art, you're forcing yourself, much as in Shiva and in Shloshim and in the mourning process, confronting things, putting them in perspective, getting them in relationship to one another. And in a way, that's very much what making a work of art is about, it seems like. So you kind of brought that out, and I never thought of it at all like that. So thank you.
I love that you mentioned that, because I think about that a lot. I come from a healing family. My dad is a doctor and my mother was a nurse, and they met in the hospital. And all of my uncles, all my sister, my mother's brothers were doctors. So medicine was, what they talked about. And when we sat around at Pesach or Rosh Hashanah, the talk always turned to medical talk. And it was very tied up with their Judaism too. It was very humane. It was compassionate, and it was intellectual. And my own experience is that art absolutely heals me. It has kept me more or less sane during the pandemic. Whenever I am off, like kind of feeling emotionally off or sad or depressed, I just hide in the studio and I make stuff. And then I can come out and be with my family again and be a human being. So experientially, I can say absolutely, for me, this is my drug. This is my therapy. I'm sure many of the artists who are sitting here with us today, share that experience too.
Yeah,
And I want to say, this is Cheslin. I just love what you just said, Judith, and Richard. I love what you said. I mean, the healing in the sense that Torah to me is just always about, the engagement of how do we navigate separation, and the separation unholing. And so to me, I mean, how poignant is it? Separation from your mother in one sense, but at the same time allowing for that dissolution. And I like that idea that you said about the whiteness, but how you took that our tradition sort of so allows for that creative process to allow it to Torah always to unfold like an ever an ever divided crystal sort of thing. There's always room for more faces, so to speak. And I feel like you created that in a very active way in how you engaged with making this work of art, so that you could have the and both. And you sort of demonstrate, I said in my comment, demonstrate the nature of engaging with Torah by exactly how you engaged in making this piece, and both. And you show how Torah allows us to be ourselves completely in whatever our experience is, it holds us.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's so true. So well said,
Judy?
Cheslin.
I have a question.
Okay.
The
Yes.
text that you wrote, what is the text around?
You probably missed that part. It's Eshet Chayil.
It's what?
Eshet
Eshet
Chayil.
Chayil. No, because I thought there is Chanka, and I don't know. Okay.
It's mixed up because it's covered up, so it's hard to read it.
Uh-huh.
But so it doesn't relate to the parsha, but it related to my mother. It
Yeah.
described her so well. I just couldn't resist putting that in. I wasn't going to put her resting on a bed, but talking about Metzora. It's just no way.
Yeah, and just to add that not only is your artistic process healing for yourself, but by you sharing it with us, you become a healer. And like the Kohen, the priest, who is the one who facilitates the healing process. So by finding it within yourself that you're able to spread it to us all. So thank you for that so much. And in fact, just to end off with another reading in the name Metzora could be those very words, Metzora, a process that extracts the negativity from whatever the experience is. So through the art process, through the purification process and such, we release and rid from the negative aspects of it and retain the positive.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes.
Love you.
The parsha, starting with Rabbi Baruch Thaler's question of why are we bringing the Metzora in if this is about the healing process? And I think that's very much what you embarked to do, and what you accomplished was that the healing process is very much a part the reintegration, and the Kohen that reintegrates and allows the past and allows what created before to be all amalgamated through the contrasts, through the opposing images. You're able to take that the fullness of your mother's life and the complete color spectrum that is anchored in the background and foreground with her ascent, and it's just such a beautiful painting. I hope everyone received this piece with the sensitivity and really that artistic desire to find meaning. I hope everyone finds meaning in their own Shabbats and in their own onegs, as we all have a Gan Eden-ik Shabbat. Take care, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Good Shabbos, and a happy Passover. leap forward into the
Yes.
light. Okay.
Happy Pesach.
Shabbos and Shabbat.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Javier, hang on. for just a
Bye-bye.
minute. I got a
Thank
couple
you.
questions. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith.